Salam.
This is a land of myth and legend, said to be home to the Queen of Sheba and King Solomon's mines. For centuries, tales of treasure on these islands drew explorers and fortune hunters.
Think of the Bible you know as a watered-down, government-approved version of a much more dangerous reality. Ethiopian monks have spent centuries guarding 81 books that were banned by the West because they were too wild to control.
Long before it was the religion of the Roman Empire, it was the religion here in Ethiopia. Ethiopia was the first Christian kingdom in the world.
Inside these pages, Jesus speaks about the end times as a war of spirits and frequencies, not just armies. He describes a parasite that enters through greed and turns living people into walking tombs. This is a key detail that changes everything we know about the soul. Hands down, this is the most terrifying revelation ever pulled from the ancient world. Ethiopian legacy. Ethiopian Christianity is not just a religion. It is a time capsule that has been locked shut for nearly 2,000 years. Most people in the West grew up reading a Bible with 66 books, or 73 if they are Catholic. But here is the deal. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has 81 books in its canon. That is 15 more than the version most of the world uses. For centuries, people thought these extra books were just medieval myths or local legends. But science just checked that arrogance. Radiocarbon dating on the Garima Gospels found in a remote mountain monastery proved they were written between 330 and 650 AD. This makes them the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts in the entire world. Basically, while the rest of the world was editing and deleting text to fit a political narrative, these monks were copying the raw, unfiltered files of history. One of the most overlooked aspects of these manuscripts is the Book of Enoch. This text was once considered sacred by early Christians, but the Roman Church eventually banned it. Why? Because it describes a reality that is messy and terrifying. It does not just say people were bad before the Great Flood. It details a cosmic invasion where 200 Watcher Angels descended to Mount Hermon. These beings took human wives and created a race of genetic hybrids called the Nephilim. These giants ruled the earth and consumed human resources until there was nothing left. The Ethiopian Bible treats this as absolute historical fact. It even names the leaders of these fallen angels, like Samiyaza and Azazel. It says they taught humans forbidden technologies, like how to forge weapons of war and how to use cosmetics to seduce. This was not just a sin, it was an unauthorized technology transfer that changed human biology forever. The text gets incredibly specific about how these beings corrupted the earth. It is not some vague poem. It describes the physical reality of a world under siege by higher intelligence. The Western world deleted this because it did not fit the clean, controllable story they wanted to tell. But Ethiopia kept it. They understood that you cannot just delete history because it makes you uncomfortable. And get this. These monks believe that the 66-book Bible is the wide path meant for the masses, a version designed to keep people docile. The 81 books are the narrow gate for those ready to handle the full weight of the truth. We are finally looking at the original source code, and it suggests that the spiritual world is far more crowded and dangerous than we were led to believe. This brings us to a massive realization that the version of history we have been reading is the censored, government-approved one. But the Book of Enoch is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these hidden files. The real bombshell is a text called the Mashafah Kedan, or the Book of the Covenant. This is where the story gets truly intense, because it deals directly with what happened after the resurrection. In the Western tradition, the time between the empty tomb and the ascension is mostly a blur of a few nice meetings. In the Ethiopian tradition, it is the main event. Jesus stays for 40 days to give his followers a final briefing for a war that has never ended. This text contains secret instructions that are terrifyingly specific about the future of humanity and the nature of the soul. Hidden within these 40 days is a warning about a deception so deep it wears the face of the truth. Walking tombs. The standard Gospel of Luke makes the time after the resurrection seem like a quiet farewell tour. But in the Ethiopian Book of the Covenant, the risen Christ gathers his disciples to prepare them for a brutal spiritual conflict. He introduces a concept that will blow your mind: the builder of shadows. He explains that the material world, including empires and systems of money, is actually the playground of a deceptive force. He tells his followers not to build temples of stone because stone will always crumble. Instead, he tells them to build the temple of the heart. This might sound like a simple metaphor, but in this text, it is a literal command to bypass organized religion entirely. He specifically warns against a future where men in long robes will use his name to hoard gold and turn his message into a weapon for war. The specificity here is what scares scholars the most. It is as if he is looking 2,000 years into the future and seeing exactly how his teachings would be hijacked. But here is the catch. He introduces a dualistic view of the human soul that feels almost biological. He says every human has two winds blowing through them: the wind of life and the wind of error. The wind of error is described like a parasite. It enters the body through greed, through the eyes when they look at forbidden things, and through the mouth when it speaks lies. Once this wind gets inside, it begins to calcify the heart. It turns a living, breathing human into what he calls a walking tomb. It is a spiritual zombie apocalypse where people look alive on the outside, but they are hollow shells on the inside. This is exactly why the Roman Empire had to suppress this text. Rome needed obedient citizens who feared the emperor and the church hierarchy. They did not need self-aware mystics who believed that the church was unnecessary. If you believe the kingdom of heaven is literally inside your own body, hidden in the silence between your thoughts, you become uncontrollable. You do not pay taxes to the temple, and you do not bow to the bishop. The Book of the Covenant also contains bizarre details about the earth that science is only now confirming. He speaks of the storehouses of snow and the gates of the winds. For a long time, people thought this was just poetry. But modern science confirms that weather patterns move in global currents, which are basically rivers of wind in the sky. And it does not stop there. He speaks of an abyss of water trapped deep beneath the earth. Recently, scientists discovered a massive ocean of water trapped in rock 400 miles below the surface. There is more water down there than in all the oceans on the surface combined. The Ethiopian Bible was right about the water and the winds thousands of years ago. If it was right about the physical world, we have to wonder if it is right about the spiritual parasite too. The tone of these 40 days is not the gentle vibe of the Sermon on the Mount. It is the urgent briefing of a general before he leaves the battlefield. He warns that the darkness will come and it will wear his face. That is hands down the scariest line in the book. It suggests that the ultimate deception will look exactly like the thing it is trying to destroy. This message implies that the very institutions we trust might be the ones hiding the truth from us. Radioactive Ark. You cannot talk about the secrets of Ethiopia without talking about the Ark of the Covenant. In the movies, it is a lost relic found in Egypt. But in the real world, every single Ethiopian believes it is currently sitting in a small stone chapel in the city of Aksum. This is not just a story for tourists, it is the central pillar of their entire civilization. The legend says that Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, smuggled the real ark out of Jerusalem and brought it to the Ethiopian highlands 3,000 years ago. They even claim they left a wooden replica behind to fool the Israelites. While that sounds like a wild heist story, the physical evidence in Aksum is hard to ignore. The ark is described in ancient texts as a gold-plated chest, but it is also described as a devastating weapon. It could level walls, burn armies, and cause people's hair to fall out if they got too close. That sounds exactly like radiation sickness. And get this, the monk who guards the ark today shows all the signs of high-level exposure. Only one man is chosen for this job, and once he is appointed, he can never leave the chapel grounds. He stays there until he dies. Reporters who have managed to speak to these guardians over the years say the men often develop cataracts and lose their sight within a few years of taking the job. Their skin turns pale and they die young. Why would a wooden box do that unless it is actually a piece of ancient technology or a high-voltage capacitor? Ethiopia is the only African nation that was never colonized, and the locals do not think that is a coincidence. In 1896, the Italians invaded with modern guns and artillery. The Ethiopians crushed them at the Battle of Adwa using mostly spears and old rifles. It was an impossible victory that shocked the world. The locals say the ark was brought to the battlefield and a terrible light blinded the Italian soldiers. This brings a whole new meaning to the idea of divine intervention. Even the Knights Templar knew about this. In the 12th century, they traveled to Ethiopia searching for the ark. You can see their symbols carved into the stone churches of Lalibela. They knew the Holy Grail was not a cup, it was a bloodline in this radioactive box. This bloodline is the other half of the mystery. The Ethiopian emperors, known as the Solomonic dynasty, ruled from the time of Menelik all the way until 1974. That is a continuous line of kings for almost 3,000 years. They claim to be the blood relatives of Jesus Christ through the line of David. If Mary was of the house of David and the Ethiopian kings were of the house of David, they are cousins. This means that while Europe was worshiping Jesus as a distant god, Ethiopia was being ruled by his family. Recent genetic studies confirm that there was a massive migration of people from Israel into Ethiopia 3,000 years ago. The science actually backs up the legend. This creates a backdoor to the entire story of Christianity that the West has ignored for far too long. The secrets of the blood are written in the stone, and the stone itself tells an impossible story. Vanished debris. If you travel south of Aksum, you find something that defies the laws of engineering. This is Lalibela, home to 11 churches that were not built, but carved straight out of solid volcanic rock. We are not talking about caves. These are massive, intricate cathedrals with windows, columns, and advanced drainage systems, all carved from one single piece of stone. It is a negative sculpture. You have to visualize the entire building in 3 dimensions and then remove everything that is not the church. One single mistake or one cracked pillar would ruin the entire project. You cannot glue a piece of volcanic rock back on once it is gone. Modern engineers have looked at these structures and they are completely baffled. To carve these 11 churches using only hand tools like chisels and hammers would take 40,000 men over a century. Yet, the records say it was done in only 24 years. And here is the deal. There is no evidence of the debris. Millions of tons of rock just vanished from the site. The local monks say that humans worked during the day, but at night, angels came down to finish the work. They say the angels used tools of light that sliced through the rock like it was butter. Does a tool of light sound like a chisel to you? Or does it sound like some form of directed energy technology? Some researchers believe the Ark of the Covenant was used at Lalibela as a power source to soften the stone. There are ancient accounts in other cultures of people using sound frequencies to make rock pliable. If the Ethiopians had this technology, it explains how they achieved laser-perfect precision 800 years ago. The Church of St. George is the most famous example. It is shaped like a perfect cross and dug 40 feet deep into a pit. The roof is at ground level, so you have to look down into it. The drainage system is so advanced that even after 8 centuries of heavy rain, the church has never flooded. Underneath the complex is a labyrinth of pitch-black tunnels meant to symbolize the descent into hell. Recently, 3-dimensional laser scans of the site have revealed hollow spaces under the floors that have not been opened in 800 years. The priests say these are the treasuries of the saints, filled with gold and ancient manuscripts. The world is obsessed with the pyramids, but Lalibela is arguably more complex. The pyramids are stacked blocks, but Lalibela is pure subtraction. It requires a level of planning that suggests a computer-like precision. King Lalibela wanted to build a new Jerusalem in Africa to keep the faith safe from the wars in the Middle East. He succeeded so well that while European cathedrals were being bombed in world wars, these rock-hewn churches remained untouched. The stone holds the secret of how to manipulate matter itself. If the history you learned was censored by emperors, what else is hidden in those 81 books? Are we living in the webs of illusion the monks warned about? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you are ready for more forbidden history, hit that like button and subscribe for more.